Chittenango is a charming village located in Madison County, New York, known for its historical significance and small-town appeal. Situated about 15 miles east of Syracuse, it is part of the larger Syracuse metropolitan area. The village is nestled along Chittenango Creek, which once powered mills and industries that contributed to the town's growth in the 19th century. Chittenango is famously the birthplace of L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and the town embraces this heritage with Oz-themed festivals, murals, and attractions. The annual Oz-Stravaganza Festival celebrates Baum's legacy, drawing visitors from far and wide to experience parades, costume contests, and themed events. The area surrounding Chittenango is scenic, with natural beauty highlighted by Chittenango Falls State Park, where a 167-foot waterfall is a major attraction. The park offers hiking trails and picturesque picnic spots. Chittenango also has a rich Native American history, being close to the land of the Oneida Nation, one of the original members of the Iroquois Confederacy. Today, Chittenango maintains a balance between its historic roots and modern-day living, with a cozy, family-friendly environment, local shops, and a tight-knit community feel. Its proximity to Syracuse provides access to urban amenities while preserving the quiet, rural charm of the village.
There's Lori. Say hi, Lori.
Hi.
Lori Leonard's life seemed to be moving in a positive direction. At 33, she was a devoted single mother of 2 young boys, doing everything she could to provide them with a stable and happy life in Chittenango, New York. She was described as a kind and caring woman, deeply committed to her family, even in the face of the struggles that came with single motherhood. But one fateful day in May 2002, Lori vanished, and her disappearance would soon become one of the most chilling murder cases in the area's history. On the day she went missing, Lori had dropped her sons off at a relative's house before heading to pick up Yankees tickets in Albany, a small reward she had planned for herself after weeks of hard work and family responsibilities. It was a trip that should have been routine, but Lori never made it to her destination. Her car was found abandoned in the Syracuse area, and her family's worst fears began to surface. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no sign of her. Lori Leonard had disappeared without a trace, leaving her family desperate for answers. In the days following her disappearance, attention quickly turned to a man named Doyle, someone Lori had met online. They had formed a relationship, and in the months leading up to her disappearance, Doyle had become a regular presence in her life. He even helped her move to a new home shortly before she vanished, giving the impression that he was a supportive figure. However, from the moment Lori's family met him, they were suspicious. There was something about him that didn't sit right. He seemed secretive, and there were gaps in his story that the family couldn't quite understand. When Lori went missing, their suspicions about Doyle grew. The investigation into Lori Leonard's disappearance was massive, stretching from New York City to the Canadian border. It involved multiple law enforcement agencies, including the Chittenango Police, the Washington County Sheriff's Department, the New York State Police, and Hudson Falls Police. In total, more than 750 people were interviewed, and investigators pursued over 280 leads. Despite the massive scope of the investigation, progress was slow. Lori had simply disappeared without any immediate clues as to what might have happened. That changed on a warm Sunday morning in July, more than 2 months after Lori had gone missing. A recreational boater on the Champlain Canal, north of Albany, made a horrifying discovery. Floating in the canal was a large metal toolbox, the kind typically used in the back of a pickup truck. The box had been weighted down with a sandbag, but the weight had not been enough to keep it submerged. The natural process of decomposition, combined with the constant churning of boat propellers in the canal, had brought the box to the surface. Inside, the boater discovered a gruesome sight: the decomposing body of Lori Leonard. Lori's body was identified using dental records, and the discovery of her remains sent shockwaves through the community. The gentle, caring mother had met a horrific end. The medical examiner determined that she had died from a lack of oxygen, though investigators were tight-lipped about the exact details of her death. They had their suspicions, but they still needed solid evidence to piece together what had happened. As the investigation into Lori's death intensified, Doyle's name continued to come up. From the beginning, Doyle had been evasive. He claimed he didn't know where Lori had gone, but admitted they had been in contact up until her disappearance. Investigators began to zero in on Doyle as their primary suspect. His connection to Lori, his erratic behavior, and his failure to provide a clear explanation for his whereabouts on the day Lori vanished all pointed in his direction. The final piece of the puzzle came when investigators searched Doyle's vehicle and found a key that fit perfectly into the lock of the toolbox in which Lori's body had been discovered. This damning evidence was enough for the police to make their move. Doyle was arrested at his workplace, an ice cream company in Saratoga Springs, where he had been working quietly since Lori's disappearance. He did not resist arrest, but he also did not cooperate. Throughout the entire process, Doyle remained silent, refusing to give any statements to law enforcement. With Doyle in custody, investigators pieced together the horrifying details of Lori's final moments. It became clear that Doyle, who had seemed helpful and caring on the surface, had harbored far darker intentions. Lori had trusted him, even allowing him to help her move and staying in contact with him up until the day she disappeared. But at some point, whether out of jealousy, anger, or a need for control, Doyle had taken Lori's life. The exact location and sequence of events leading up to her death remain unclear, as Doyle's silence prevented investigators from knowing all the details. However, they were confident in the evidence they had gathered. For Lori's family, the discovery of her body brought both heartbreak and a sense of closure. They had spent more than 2 months living in a state of uncertainty, hoping against hope that Lori would be found alive. The news of her death was devastating, but knowing that Doyle had been arrested and charged with her murder brought some measure of relief. They had suspected him from the beginning, and now they knew that their instincts had been correct. Lori's mother, Barbara Sloan, expressed gratitude to the law enforcement officials who had worked tirelessly to bring Lori home. She knew that nothing could bring her daughter back, but she took solace in the fact that the person responsible for her death would face justice. Lori's sister-in-law, Patty Leonard, was more vocal in her anger. She believed that Doyle's criminal past, he had prior convictions for drug offenses and an arrest for unlawful imprisonment and assault, should have raised red flags sooner. She was convinced that if the system had been more vigilant, Lori would still be alive. If Doyle had not slipped through the cracks, Lori would still be alive, Patty said with bitterness. Doyle's arrest marked the beginning of the legal process that would eventually see him answer for his crime. Although he refused to give a statement, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The key found in his vehicle was the most damning piece, connecting him directly to Lori's death and the disposal of her body. As the case moved forward, there were still many unanswered questions, but one thing was certain. Lori Leonard had trusted the wrong person, and that trust had cost her her life. Lori's murder became a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting people with dark pasts, even when they present themselves as helpful or caring. Her family's grief was compounded by the knowledge that Doyle had been allowed to slip through the cracks, despite his criminal history. For them, the only solace came in knowing that Doyle would be held accountable, and that Lori's tragic death would not be in vain. Though the full details of her final hours may never be known, Lori Leonard's memory lives on through her children, her family, and the community that rallied around them in their time of need. She will always be remembered as a loving mother, taken far too soon by the actions of a man she thought she could trust.